Welcome to the Got Invention Show. I'm your host, Brian Freed. And just thinking about it, there are so many toys that we grew up with, not just toys, but games, so many different things that we played with along the way. Do you know who the inventor is? Well, we have Mary Couzin. She's from Chicago Toy and Game Group, now known as People of Play. She's on our show today. Mary, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me. This is exciting.
Well, look, the topic here today is getting the recognition that toy inventors deserve. Because think about it, there are actors out there are musicians, right? There's great songs that we hum along to every day. There's culinary stars, right? There's all kinds of famous chefs that we know, all these type of people that we just kind of follow. But what about the toy inventors that we play all those toys growing up? We love them. We even talk about them to our kids. But who invented it, right? So maybe you can help us.
Oh, I'd love to. It's one of my favorite topics. And Tim Walsh, a fellow inventor that we know well, Tim said it perfectly. He said, if you sell 1 million albums, you're on the cover of Rolling Stone, 1 million books, the New York bestseller list. But if you've sold over 100 million Jengas, like Leslie Scott has, nobody knows who you are. And it's the same creative process, right? Like, how is it different? You're creating music, you're creating a toy or game, and you're going through all the rough things to get it sold and get it out there and market it. Like, if we just use Jenga to start the example out, Leslie mortgaged her own home. Her mother mortgaged her home. I mean, she was like doing demos in all the stores. I mean, she really worked hard to get Jenga out there. You wouldn't know it now. Everybody just thinks, oh, maybe Hasbro invented it. But it came from a woman 50 years ago who worked her butt off to bring that to the public. And
Wow.
and Leslie is super interesting. She lives in London, and she's involved in all sorts of charities, and she's writing books, and super cool person. And why doesn't the average person on the street know her? I mean, she's like Taylor Swift, right? Like, I don't know, 100 million, over 100 million Jengas. How many?
Wow.
I don't know what Taylor Swift has sold, but I think Leslie's probably sold more Jengas than the Beatles have albums.
Well, I know that you've been in the toy and game world for quite a bit. We've gotten a chance to know each other for decades already, I guess, at this point. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mary, and your background.
Oh, sure. So I've had a couple of I've been doing a lot of different dabbling around, if you will. I was in real estate for a long time, but it wasn't until I invented a few board games that I really fell in love with this community of inventors. And I didn't even know they existed. I didn't know, I, like probably many consumers, didn't realize there was this community of toy and game inventors, like there are, I'm sure, with other industries that you work in. And I just fell in love with these people. They were creative and fun, and I just knew I had to stay in this business. And it kind of morphed over the years, evolved to helping other inventors. So I've self-produced, I've licensed, and now I'm helping other inventors. And I have events to promote play, like our Chicago Toy and Game Fair, and then we have an inventor conference where toy and game inventors can pitch to all the companies, Hasbro, Mattel, Spin Master. Actually, we get over 200 people easy from 25 countries, and you can pitch. It's the largest in
Wow.
the industry. And we have the Toy and Game Innovation Awards, where we celebrate innovation in the industry. And we want to encourage those kids. We have a Young Inventor Challenge. And maybe about a dozen of our kids have been licensed, and they've had their products in Target and elsewhere. And that's, for kids 6 to 18. And then, of course, everything comes to a crescendo at our Chicago Toy and Game Fair, where we promote play and we introduce the inventors to the public. And the public loves talking and learning the stories that these toy and game inventors went through to get their products out there. And there are really some great stories.
Tell us about the Chicago Toy and Game Expo or trade show that it is. What type of experience is that for the listeners and watchers to know about?
So we have a lot of activities. So there's booths So companies have booths there, and they're promoting their products to the consumers, and the companies get their feedback right directly from the consumers. It's like product testing in the wild, a focus group in the wild, right? Like, usually when you have play groups, play testing groups, you bring them into your office. Here, you've got a true test. You've got all the people who want to try your games, get to meet you, maybe even develop a relationship over time with the manufacturer. It's really their only opportunity to develop that kind of relationship with the consumer, and the consumer learns the stories. And of course, we have fun things at the fair, like the Young Inventor Challenge and a Star Wars lunch, and that's a lot of fun. We have the 501st and Darth Vader and a lot of costume characters walking around, and it's really a celebration of innovation and play for everybody. We even have a conference for teachers to learn how to incorporate play into the classroom. Play makes learning so much easier, right? It's just there's a lot of studies that document that.
It's been interesting because back in the day when I used to attend your Chicago Toy and Game Fair, I think I met Daryl Hannah there,
Yeah,
John Ratzenberger from Cheers. Uh, there's so many amazing experiences that were going on there, but one of the main ones was that inventors and people that had toy and game products were able to showcase it there, get feedback, get buyers, get the public to come in and actually interact with them. And what you and I also had an experience with was even back then, you were doing the Young Inventor Challenge in its own way, where you were showcasing young inventors to be able to present their products. And I think there were a bunch of schools that came in groups to compete. So that was great.
it was great. I love the kids. It's been kind of a passion project of ours over the years. And it started because my daughter in fourth grade invented a card game, and I saw the process she went through and how much she loved it, and so we started at the fair. I think it's important. It hits all the creative. It's a STEM activity, right? It
That's
really is,
great.
or even STEAM. But yeah, John Ratzenberger is an inventor. Not a lot of people know that. He invented that crinkle cut stuff that's in packaging, and Daryl Hannah's invented several board games. I mean, people don't, I mean, they're celebrities for sure, but anyone can really invent a toy or game if you put your head to it, I think.
So here we are. I mean, just kind of reminiscing, talking about Transformers and G.I. Joe and Cabbage Patch Kids and Othello and Monopoly and Battleship. I mean, those are some that just come to mind. A couple weeks ago, I talked about Stretch Armstrong, how I used to pull it until all the jelly came out and I had to get it thrown away. I didn't know what kind of toxic chemicals were coming out of it back then. But just really thinking about, and just if everybody just pauses for a second and think about your favorite toy and game, or games and toys that you grew up with and what they look like today. And who is it that invented it? What's the story behind those inventors? So, Mary, if you can share with us some of those, maybe the ones that are not with us, and then maybe some that are, that they can get the recognition that they deserve.
One of my favorite stories is Reuben Klamer. He died 2 years ago at the age of 99, but he did the Game of Life. And at our fair, I want to say 15 years ago, he was signing them. And there was a line wrapped around the Hasbro booth, which was an enormous booth, that then went down the aisle and out the door. Like, it was an incredibly long line because people wanted to meet Reuben, the guy who invented the game. Because that game, it actually influenced people and what they did in their lives. When Reuben went in for a triple bypass, his cardiologist told him that the reason he became a doctor was because that's when he won at the Game of Life.
Wow.
I know, like, it's just like these stories.
I thought it would be Operation.
Yeah, I know. Well, there's a really great documentary on that Peggy Brown and Tim Walsh did. The irony of that story is he only got $500 for inventing Operation, right? And so he didn't make money on it. He was a college kid, and Marvin Glass and Associates bought the idea from him. And he, $500, I guess back in the day was, it was something. And he was newly married with a kid on the way. But now at his age, I think this was maybe 6, 7 years ago, he couldn't afford an operation himself to fix his teeth. And so Peggy Brown and Tim Walsh did this big fundraiser, and they more than made enough money for him to pay for his operation on his teeth. They also, like, I think, paid off his mortgage. And then the funny part was, or the ironic part, is that a guy who created, a doctor who created some type of instrument for thyroid operations, so that if you got too close to some nerve, it would go off just like in operation. And John Spinello, the inventor of operation, his daughter had that operation. Like, there's some pretty cool stories out there. And then a good friend of Reuben Klamer's, Eddie Goldfarb, who was 102. He invented kerplunk, chattering teeth, shark attack. I mean, I could go on, long list of things. And Eddie is still inventing at 102. He has a girlfriend. He's working in his garage. Like, I think inventing keeps you young, right? Like, it keeps you sharp. It keeps you young. I don't know, like, these stories are great. The BMTs, which used to be Breslin, Morrison, and Terzian, now BMT, Big Monster Toys. So Jeff Breslow, one of the founders, he invented ants in the pants and gestures, all sorts of toys and games, very well known around the world. And he went into retirement at 65 because everybody had to retire at 65. And he became a sculptor, and his sculptures are all over the world now. And he even had a big showing in the Sears Tower, or whatever the Sears Tower is called now. I forget. They keep changing the name of the Sears Tower. But Jeff just came out with a new game called Pickle Everything. Like, he's in his 70s. Like, no one ever really leaves the toy industry, and they love it. And, there is no reason to really retire from it.
It's very interesting. And Mary, you and I have both been on kind of both sides of watching successes of many inventors, and they may not necessarily be in the spotlight like the Jenga, but they've had some level of success. And then we also see people that are coming up with ideas every day, and specifically for you, toy and game, and think about what they need to go through and what they need to do when they come up with an idea. So, not to make it so simplistic at this point, but you've been through it many times, Mary. So, just for the community and for the watchers out there and listeners, if you can just give us some step by step of what it takes when you do have that idea in your head, what comes next?
Sure. Well, first I would refer them to an article you wrote about how to vet things and where to go and checking things. So they should definitely, you might want to reference that somewhere. The article you wrote is excellent. But a lot of people don't do play testing. Like, they come up with this idea and they think they can sell the idea. But when you play test, you learn more about your idea and you can make it better. Very important to play test. A lot of people forget that, or even Googling to see if it already exists. I can't tell you how many people have spent money to come, like, to our conferences, and that idea is already out there.
Mary, when you're saying play test, are you talking about making a prototype and trying it yourself, getting other people, almost like a focus group?
Exactly. And not with your family, because your family will always only tell you good things. It's got to be people you don't know. You've got to, like, put down your toy or game or any invention, really, and let them figure it out. Very important.
Hmm. What about protecting a toy and a game that you might come up with? I mean, for the most part, we know that a board exists if you're getting into a board game. And then there's the graphics and the instructions and the pieces. So, have you seen or kind of an understanding of how it is to protect, let's say, a board game to start with, and then we know, for example, like characters or specific figurines, maybe those are ornamental for design patents. But what if you can just navigate us through a little bit of how to protect a toy or a game?
Sure. Well, there's different ways. There's copyrights and trademarks and patents and, provisional. There's lots of different ways to protect your ideas. The thing about the board games are the hardest to protect because somebody can make just some small change, right? And then just bring it out. So I'm not an attorney. I'd like to first point that out. So you always check with your own legal advice. But I've seen a lot of inventors spend a lot of money on like board game patents when really it doesn't help them much. And it kind of makes me, unless you have some mechanism that is so unique, but if it's like a path game, for example, just where you're rolling the dice or reading cards, there's really nothing patentable about that. It has to be a mechanism of some sort. So you have to really, I would actually get advice from a couple of attorneys, not just one, to make sure you're not just wasting your money in some cases. But you can trademark something if the name is really, really good and unusual, and you can run a trademark search very easily. But copyright, that's nothing really, right? It's very inexpensive to copyright. So that's something I would recommend everybody does.
One thing that really I feel is very important, especially in toy and games, is the graphics.
Oh, right.
Right? You have to catch my eye to really engage my emotions to say, "I wanna be involved. I wanna play that game. That looks so cool." You wanna create the way that it looks for a girl or a boy to just grab it and say, "I want that because it looks amazing." Like, how important is that, do you feel, for people to really for it to catch on?
Oh, it's critical. It's absolutely to your point. There, I think there are awards for graphic artists, and I know at the Taggy Awards we do have a category for art and design of packaging. I mean, it is super, super critical because you could have the greatest game in the world, right? And no one will, or few people will pick it up. I mean, actually, Gary Gatchell is a guy. He invented a game called Pick Two, but the graphic, it was just in a little box, and it was a great game. But when Bananagrams came along, same game, exact same game, but they put it in a banana. They sold millions, and Gary didn't, even though I mean his game got in some schools and things like that. But they're the same game, right? For the most
Mhm.
part, it's just that they put it in a banana, and Bananagrams is huge, right?
The experience of having a board game or a physical toy in your hand or game to play with, sports, it can go into many different categories. There's a lot of kids out there now that are on mobile devices, and many of them have shifted to apps. Angry Bird and I don't know, the ones with the balls and the marbles and all these different things that are out there. Even video games on PlayStation and Xbox and all the iterations of those. So what's been your experience, Mary, as we've been growing up in the industry? What does it look like and how do you feel about those? I could tell you that I've had Marty Cooper, who's the inventor of the cell phone, on our show, and he started off loving the cell phone, and I interviewed him again many years later, and now he's disappointed with the
Oh,
way that smartphones are being used because he feels like people aren't communicating anymore. And the whole purpose was for him to keep people together with communication and cell phones. But now look at where we are. People are so zoned into what they are. They don't even know what's going on around them. So, Mary, in your experience of now going through this journey of toy and games, how do you feel and what do you think about apps and mobile phone experience?
when all the electronic games and video games and apps and everything were coming out, people predicted that toys and games would go away, right? Like there was a lot of fear in the industry, and of course it didn't happen, right? I look at it like it's like sometimes you want a McDonald's, like an app game, and sometimes you want a Monopoly or Tribond or Qubits or Pigs on Trampoline. You want a full game experience. It's just like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Sometimes you want a quick option, sometimes you want the full experience, a full dinner, full Sunday night dinner. So I think all play is good. Although that being said, it does make me sad when you walk into a room and everybody's on their phone and nobody's talking to each other. especially when I see kids doing it. And I've heard that in Silicon Valley that a lot of the executives don't give their kids phones until they're like going to grade school or something. So it's and there's a lot of studies that have shown. I mean, I'm talking about excessive use. I'm not talking about, you know, playing a few times here and there during the week for kids.
When you're going through the different categories of toy and game, there's sports, there's board games. Maybe I'm probably missing a bunch of them. Those are just a few. But what do you feel like is the best category for an inventor to get involved with? And then on the other side, because you're very into the statistics and all your newsletters and your outreach to the toy and game world, what do you think is from the consumer perspective the hottest category?
That's a great question. During the pandemic, it was definitely puzzles and board games,
Mm.
right? Huge, huge. In fact, a lot of the companies thought that was going to continue after the pandemic, and people had stocked up on it, and then they just wanted to be outside, so that hurt the industry afterwards for a while there. But what's like the hot? I know crafts are hot right now, a lot of crafts. But that being said, if you're an inventor, you should invent what you're passionate about, because if it's a great product, they're going to license it no matter what the category is, right? You need to love what you're doing. I mean, I think that's more important than trying to figure out the hot category.
When you're saying craft, what brings to mind is the gentleman from, Rainbow Loom.
Oh,
That
Choon.
was one of June, right? That was, a latest craze back in the day where I know people were going nuts over that. What do you think really made that so popular?
Yeah, that was, he started in his garage. It was a craze, right? Um, just like, Poppet Story is really good too. But what made Choon, I don't know. I mean, it was everything. It was like a perfect storm. Like the colors were good. Girls, mostly girls bought it, right? Like they love making their own jewelry and sharing it. And then, of course, he had that suit on Jimmy Fallon, right? Do you remember that? Or was it Kimmel? One of the Jimmys wore this rainbow loom suit and to raise money for cancer. And Choon bought it, and he wore it at our Play Chic event, which was toy inspired fashion, and it was awesome. Like he's great, and he's got new products out now and a lot of fun stuff. So he's reinventing himself for like reinventing, kind of um, spin-offs of the original concept. And that's a great story. I mean, literally working in his garage with his wife, with his kids, and just building that business up because he believed in it. It was something he loved. Um,
Whether it's the toy and game industry or other things that are out there, what kind of turn viral, what do you think it is that makes this opportunity happen for people, especially from you and what you've seen in the toy and game? Because you've seen a lot of things kind of start and take off, and I know you follow them pretty closely. What is it? Is it publicity, media? Is it social media? I know we just talked about kind of staying away from the phones, but is that what's helping? So maybe you can just kind of, because there's people out there that come up with an idea and they're like, how would anybody know what I came up with?
Yeah, that's true. I think there is a lot of luck involved. The Poppet craze, it's a really funny story about that. So I was in Israel some years back, so sort of a guest of the Koster family, and a very famous inventing family in Israel. They did Elephant and Guess Who and Zingo and loads of products, like crazy number of products. And Aura, who's no longer with us, but at the time, Aura, the matriarch, showed me this round poppet thing, right? And she just loved it. She said she had a dream of a field of breath. And then her husband created the prototype, Theo. He was lovely too, and no longer with us. But so she invented this and she showed it to me. And oh gosh, maybe now it's a little bit longer. It's probably closer to 10 years. But she showed it to me. She said, "Where can we get this license? Somebody's got to buy this." Like, and she showed me how it pops. and it was cool, but I couldn't think of anything, and I couldn't help her. But then Foxmind saw it, David from Foxmind, and he fell in love with it, and he did a game called Cat and Mouse. And then some influencer on TikTok fell in love with it, the popping of it. So she ordered some products from him as a retailer, and she sold them all out in the first week. And then she ordered like 10 times that the second week. And then it just kept growing. It was just this random thing on TikTok. Like, who
Wow.
would have guessed, right? Like, totally. And unfortunately, Aura wasn't around anymore to see like how it became this big craze, and just random. Like, so luck plays a big part of this, right? It really does. You just,
Interesting.
yeah, just like Twister almost, Hasbro canned Twister. They weren't going to do it anymore. And then Eva Gabor, I think, or Ava or Eva, one of the Gabor sisters, played it on the Johnny Carson show. And then it just became a smash hit after that. Like, that's totally random, right? That Hasbro didn't know they were going to be playing that on the Johnny Carson show. Um, so yeah, there is the element of luck is a big part of this for sure.
Mary, you've been in the industry for quite some time, and I know there's a lot more that you're going to see. If you can give us some words of wisdom, there are inventors and just people that are just playing with games and toys and have kids, and they realize that maybe there's something fun that they can come up with. If you can give us some words of wisdom, some advice on just when we have that idea, just kind of keeping us moving forward with it, that would be great to share with the audience.
Well, I do know as an inventor, a lot of them are afraid someone's going to steal their ideas, so they're afraid to show it. So if you're afraid to show it, no one's going to find out about it. So you've got to get out there and you've got to show your products and be proud of it, and talk about, go to your local toy store, ask them what they think. That's actually like the best advice, because they will know, right? Somebody in Target won't know, or Walmart, but your local toy store, they know all the products and what's been out. But you need to get out there and promote your product and talk to people. Go to conferences like our conference, or go to a fair, and you just can't hide. Your idea is going to go nowhere if you're not talking about it.
That's fantastic. Mary, thank you so much for joining us on Got Invention Show. It's always a pleasure to get together. We'll see each other in person again soon, but we appreciate all the work that you do for the toy and game inventors and the community out there, and keep doing what you're doing. How can we keep in touch with you, Mary?
Oh, send me an email to Mary at chitag.com, CHITAG.com, or all of our telephone numbers and emails on our website, chitag.com, peopleofplay.com, and playineducation.com.
Great. Well, we'll do this again on another topic today. It was interesting to learn about some toy inventors, toy and game inventors that are no longer with us, but are today, and they should get the recognition that they deserve. So thank you, Mary, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. That was interesting. Just thinking about all those toys that we used to play with, the games, and what the kids and us are doing today. So hopefully we will recognize those toy inventors and the game inventors that are out there. Thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, keep bringing your ideas out there, keep moving them forward, and keep on inventing. Thank you.